Welcome to the Real Estate Niche Show, a show that focuses on top real estate professionals who specialize in different niches of real estate. My name is Ben Kogut. Join me as we dive deep into the professional and personal lives of the experts of the real estate industry. Welcome to the Real Estate Niche Show. I'm your host, Ben Kogut, and today I have Rob Cook as a guest. He is a CPA and CFP whose mission in life is to help families build real, meaningful legacies. By day, he serves his clients' families as a wealth advisor, helping his clients grow and protect their financial legacies. By night, he is the host of the Contenders Wanted podcast, a show dedicated to showing the world that you can have meaningful success without sacrificing what is most important in life. Through Contenders Wanted, Rob strives to help listeners go from contender to champion in their own lives, and by doing so, begin creating their own meaningful legacies. Rob is above all a husband and a father. He loves to compete in obstacle course races, volunteer at his church, learn something new or interesting, and enjoy movie nights with his family. Rob, thank you so much for joining me today. Is there anything I missed?
No, that was great. Thank you for the introduction, Ben, and thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for taking the time today. And so let's dive into it. Tell us, what is it that you specialize in?
Yeah, great question. I like to tell people that I don't necessarily have a specialty in any particular asset class or anything within real estate. I like to say that I try to be the beginning point for people's journey to finding financial freedom. If you were to look at my LinkedIn profile, which is my pretty much only social media profile, I talk a lot about personal finance and investing in different things. And I talk a lot about real estate, but I don't believe necessarily that that should be the only route that we only think about when we're thinking of pursuing financial freedom, because it's a great route. It's fantastic. There's lots of great benefits, and there's a lot of different asset classes that can suit, a myriad of different types of investors depending on their preferences and their aptitudes and skill sets and different things and different ways to get into the business. But it's not a one size fits all. I mean, there's multiple different routes in order to reach financial freedom. And so I like to think that I try and help people expand their eyes and see a little bit more, or help them figure out, okay, maybe this route is the route that's best for me. That's part of what I do.
I love that. And right before we hit the record button, you mentioned that you created a quiz. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So it's in the construction phase right now. I have all the questions built out, and I have the logic all built out, but it's actually creating it on the web as the phase I'm on at this point. But what it is, it's the quiz in roughly 13, 14-ish questions. I could tell you roughly what path is likely going to be the best for you when starting out your financial freedom journey. Without giving too much away, generally speaking, there's three main paths to financial freedom. There's through the traditional stock market, there's through real estate, and there's through business. And all three will get you there. And eventually, in my opinion, at some point in your financial freedom journey, you're going to use all three. But for starting out, we all have various predispositions and skills and different things. And this quiz attempts to help you quickly figure out which of those three paths, and then which particular niche within each of those three paths is likely the best fit for you. And then it comes along, it has a bunch of additional educational resources and things to kind of help people really kind of jumpstart their journey as they're going towards financial freedom.
Nice. Can you maybe give us a little example about someone that you've helped, or maybe a success story or something like that from the work that you've done?
Yeah, not a problem. I'll admit a lot of what I do is just kind of ancillary and just kind of helping people just I call it playing the long game. By day, I actually work as a wealth advisor. As you mentioned in the intro, I'm a CPA and a certified financial planner. And so I work as a wealth advisor, helping generally those who have already figured out their journey on the financial freedom path. So a lot of what I do around helping those at the beginning is just sharing information and just getting stuff out there and then answering various people's questions. One person that came to mind was an individual that I helped through LinkedIn. He found a bunch of my content, thought it was really, really valuable, appreciated my insight, not necessarily being so, I guess, what's the best phrase I'm trying to think for? Not so stuck in one particular route, but showing the virtues of each of them and what might be good for various individuals. And this gentleman that I was helping, he had been, in corporate life for about 15 or so years, became disillusioned, had read a couple of different books, felt like, I got to figure this thing out and got to create financial freedom for myself. But he just didn't even know where to start. And so this was before I even had the quiz or any of this sort of stuff. And so we just sent various messages back and forth. I was asking him certain questions. Well, what's your background like? What do you like to do? What are some of the things that you've been doing? What's your experience like the last 15 years beyond just your job? What is going to be likely the best path for you? Helping him trying to figure that out. And it's through experiences like that one, because eventually I asked 4, 5, 6, 7 different questions and realized, okay, this is probably the best route for him. Kind of pushed him in that direction, introduced him to a couple of different people that I thought might help him on that journey. And about 6 months later, he came back to me. He's like, hey, Rob, thanks so much. I'm starting my own business. Yeah, thanks so much for that initial push. You really got me going in the right direction. And I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. There's kind of something here. And then 3 or 4 more experiences like that. And finally, I'm like, okay, forget it. I got to just create this quiz. I got to create something that'll do this automatically for people because I think it'd be really valuable.
That's great. Yeah, I've definitely learned that the Socratic method is one of the most powerful ways to learning not only about yourself, but it's just like in general, the best way to learn. And so it sounds like you have really mastered the art of asking questions, which is definitely can be more challenging than we'd like to admit sometimes. So,
well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'll admit I don't necessarily consider myself one as a master of questions, but in my personal opinion, you should never give any advice until you've at least asked 2 or 3 questions. Because how in the world are you going to know what to say? You're just going to come from your own bias and your own perspective, when in all reality, that's not what the person wants. The person wants tailored advice or tailored help for themselves. And you can never do that if you don't ask questions.
Amen. And so that kind of leads us into the podcast that you created. You're further along in the podcasting journey than I am. And so I'd be curious to know, like, what have been some of the major lessons that you've learned along the way with Contenders Wanted?
Yeah, great question. I will admit I'm about 1.5 years into my podcasting journey. It's been a lot of fun. Really enjoy it. It's called Contenders Wanted. I interview people who have had some version of meaningful success in some way, and we try and deconstruct what it is that they do, or what is it about themselves, or the habits they've embraced, or the mental shifts that they've made that enabled them to take their lives to the next level so that others can as well. And I'd say one of the things that I've learned is that this whole digital marketing and the online world is a lot harder than you'd think. Everyone makes it sound like, just grab a mic and sit in front of it and just talk and it'll turn out great and you'll get thousands of people listening. That's not true. There's a lot more that goes into it. And it's been a lot of fun. I really actually have enjoyed it because I've always had kind of an entrepreneurial bug inside of me. And this has been one way that I've been able to kind of flex that and have some fun getting in, learning a totally different skill set. For me, like I said, I'm a CPA by background. So my background is all numbers and finance. And to come in and have to learn more about sales and marketing and entrepreneurship and a host of other things, good interviewing skills, it's all new territory for me. But it's been a lot of fun. I'm one of those that I always love learning new things. And so it's been a really, really fun journey for me.
Yeah, that's definitely relatable for me as well. Just the art of asking questions. There's so many people that make it look so easy. And so it's
definitely a skill. It takes some honing, that's for sure.
Taking some practice. Yeah, I think, like I said, I think we're probably on somewhere in the teens episodes. I'm not exactly sure. And, but I have noticed that just practicing makes things a little bit easier, a little bit more comfortable.
For sure.
So I'm assuming you felt that same way.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I'd also say the amount of prep work that I do for an episode would, I think, surprise people. I do.
About that. Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, so I do 5 to 10 hours of prep work before a single interview, and my interviews are an hour or less. So that gives you an idea of the relative proportion amount of work that I put in to make sure that I ask good questions. I actually was listening to Tim Ferriss and a couple other bigger podcasters about their processes, and one of them said, "I don't ask a question unless I have already done enough research to know the answer." Because it's my job to create an environment where this guest comes on and provides value for our listeners in a certain way. And I can't do that if I'm just asking them questions willy-nilly. I need to have a goal and a purpose and a reason for having them on. And the research enables me to do that. And I found that that's definitely been the case for me. I try to let the conversations just kind of flow as things happen. But at the same time, there are certain things that I know I want to touch on just because I know that it'll provide value for the listeners. And so even if I just start there and then kind of let it flow from there, either way, I got to do enough research to know what are the important things about these people. What are the big moments in their lives so that we can either touch on them or skip to a different one that I think would be more valuable for the listeners of the show.
Well, that's certainly good advice. And I'll definitely be working better on that. And, you had mentioned before we hit the record button that you spent some time in Houston. Mm-hmm. And maybe the reason why I bring that up is because my view is that there is some sales and marketing involved in what you're doing in Houston. So share with us what you're doing in Houston, and what were there any lessons learned there that you're applying with the sales and marketing and the business and all the things that you're doing now?
So it sounds like there's two parts to this. What was I doing there, number one? And number two, how does it apply to sales and marketing? So number one, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. A lot of people call us Mormons, but we don't necessarily go by that. So I was a Mormon missionary, the kid in the white shirt and tie riding his bike down the road. That was me. I served in the Texas Houston South Mission is what it was called. So imagine the lower third of Houston, all the way down the coast, about 500 miles, down past Victoria, if anyone's familiar with that area geographically. And that was my mission. I spent half my time out in the middle of the boonies, out in the country, in Wharton and Alvin, Texas, and then half my time in the middle of the ghettos, the Latino ghettos in the middle of Houston, where I was the only white boy for blocks and big old tall white guy and a bunch of shorter Latinos. So I stuck out like a sore thumb. But yeah, so I spent 2 years preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, trying to help people come to know him. And as part of that, there is a little bit of sales and marketing to some extent, right? You are finding, is what we call it, finding people to teach, which is very similar in sales, right? You're creating leads so that you can have opportunities to make the sale, right? Now, yeah. I in certain ways, there are certain things that are very similar, but it's also, of course, very, very different because the messages and the things that you're delivering are different in the medium and all that sort of stuff. But to your point, there were certain lessons that I definitely learned as a missionary. Number one is it's a numbers game. And I think people discount that or they don't think about that. As a missionary, one of the most disheartening things is getting the door shut in your face all the time. People rejecting you all the time. But you learned that if you were willing to just make the introduction, say hello, start the conversation enough times, eventually you'd find someone who wanted to talk to you, who you were put in their way because they needed you that day or they needed to have a conversation with you. And I had countless number of experiences like that, but it took getting through maybe 100 people who didn't want to talk to us, right? Or even a few people who really didn't want to talk to us. And I think that's the same in life and in business, sales, however. I mean, if you're trying to raise money in real estate, it's the same exact thing, right? You're going to go through maybe 99 people who say, no, thank you, I'm good. And then there's the one person who says, yeah, this is great. I'm going to give you $500,000 or whatever it might be that you're looking to raise, right? You have to be willing to play the numbers and to continue going despite the fact that maybe sometimes it's 198 times and then you get 2 in a row, right? Yeah. And it can be disheartening, but I think that was a great lesson. It made me, I was the kind of kid growing up. I played sports. I had a lot of success in sports and things. I worked hard in school, had a lot of success in school. And so I had a lot of immediate, I put in the work and immediately I'm getting the result back that I wanted. And this was the first time in my life where I believed strongly in my faith. I believed that what I was doing was really, really important. And I put in a lot of hard work, but results did not come right away. And it taught me to learn to trust the process and to learn and time, trust the Lord, using that phrase as a missionary all the time, trust the Lord in his process and his timing, and it would all work out. And I think that's a great lesson for us throughout life, is that we need to learn to trust the process, learn to embrace the journey. And as long as we're putting in the reps, doing the basic things that are important, long-term, we will get the eventual result. And I think that was a fantastic lesson for me to learn as a 19-year-old kid.
Super great lesson. I had a experience where I was part of a business school program, and they had us do door-to-door sales. Similar but different. We were selling children's encyclopedias door to door, and it was a sales competition. And I totally agree with you. One of the major lessons learned was just letting, kind of like the analogy I would use is like wearing a rain jacket. And every time you get rejected or you hear no, and some iteration of that, it's like a raindrop hitting your rain jacket, and just you got to let it fall off, because if you let it hit you and soak in, it's going to weigh you down and slow you and all those negative things. So
and that's not an easy lesson. I will admit that is not an easy lesson to get. I mean, it's easy to say in theory, but real life application, it was really hard. I'll admit it took me probably a year and a half, almost 2 years to actually get to the point where I could go dozens of times, no, before an eventual, yeah, let's chat. It takes a lot of faith, to borrow a scriptural phrase. It takes a lot of faith to just pick it up and try again, again.
Well, I guess for my listeners here, I just want to reiterate how important it is to persevere and believe in what you're working on, and that you got to kiss a lot of frog, whatever analogy you want. You gotta just keep going and keep moving forward. The CEO of my company, Corey, he signs every single email with onward, because that's the way we all got to keep moving forward and all that. So anyways, I was kind of hoping that you would talk about that for a second, because that's that I haven't talked about that on the podcast at all. Just the idea of having faith in what it is, whatever it is that you believe in, and working hard on that and not getting discouraged from the world around us. So
yeah, because there's going to be plenty of people that are going to tell you in life, business, faith, whatever, that what you're doing is dumb, or what you're doing doesn't make any sense, or they have 1,000 reasons why their way is better, right? And another version of this is that the shiny object syndrome, right? Where it's always, you're just jumping from one thing to the next. It's like, you got to just stick to it. Find your thing and have a little faith in it. Stick with it long enough for it to stick to you, right? Ed Milet says success comes to everyone as long as they're still at the station when the train gets there. So you got to stay at the station long enough.
Great quote right there. I love that. So let's pivot a little bit. We'll move forward, and we're going to talk about some of the 3 questions that I'd like to kind of wind things down with, which the first question would be, how do you like to invest in yourself?
I think personal investments and personal growth are some of the most important things that we can do. And I think that there's a host of different ways that I like to do it. I'd say first and foremost, since we've had a bit of a faith conversation, I'm one of those that every day I try and be in the scriptures to some extent. I think taking time to disconnect from the things of this world and think of more longer term things is vitally important for us to make better decisions today over the course of our lives. Beyond that, I do all sorts of different things. I'm constantly reading. I read at least 1 book a month at a minimum. And that's with everything going on to me, trying to do a million different things. And I know for some people that's probably like, well, you only read 1 a month. But I try to digest and really take in everything. So like, for example, right now I'm reading John Lee Dumas's, he's the host of the Entrepreneurs on Fire podcast, his book, The Common Path to Uncommon Success. And instead of just blowing through the 190 pages of it, I'm actually like digesting each chapter, and I'm doing all the stuff he talks about in every single chapter. So it just takes longer, right? But I'm constantly doing stuff like that. I'm finding books that are going to teach me a good skill, or going to give me a different mindset about something. It's something that I can do that will help move me along. Another thing that I like to do is I like to try and invest in some version of coaching, whether that's online courses or that's an actual face-to-face coach. I've done both. I think those are incredibly valuable for teaching specific skills when it comes to courses. And of course, a coach kind of helping you see what you don't see about yourself, see the shadows of your life, of your personality, of the things that you do that just are second nature to you at that point. I think I've found that that's been incredibly valuable. And then also my wife, as a life coach as well, helping me see those dumb things that I do. She's really good at seeing those as well.
Love that. Next question, although I kind of have an idea since we talked about it, but is there anything else you can add? How do you like to invest in the community?
Well, my faith is one way in which I really try and invest in my community. I think that having some version of a community that you can be involved in and give to outside of your professional life is really, really important. I actually also serve on a board here in my local community, my city's investment advisory council. I sit on that council to help our city make good decisions long-term for the investments that we're making so that we're good stewards of the funds that taxpayers have provided to the city. I do a host of different things in that regard.
Next question. How does Rob Cook define the word success?
I define success as living a life worth living. And for me, that means living a life where at the end of the day, and my head hits the pillow, I have done my very, very best. And I have put first things first. So some days that means that I put more time into my business. And other days that means that I need to give my family more time. Either way, if at the end of the day, I can honestly get on my knees, thank the Lord for the day, and say, Lord, I have done my very best today, then it's been a good day. I'm not perfect. And heaven knows I could probably do a heck of a lot better in a lot of different ways. But at least no one will ever fault me for my effort. And so for me, if you live a life like that long enough, you'll create that legacy that you kind of mentioned there at kind of the beginning of my bio that I'm going after. I think that success is thinking long-term and living long-term. And that requires you to know what's most important to you and point yourself in that direction and then live your life on a daily basis according to those things, the very best that you can.
I love that. Can't argue with you at all on any of that, and appreciate you sharing that. And so we're going to start winding things down a little bit. Maybe would you mind sharing with us how people could get a hold of you?
Yeah. If you'd like to connect with me or get that quiz that I'm creating, you can email me directly at rob@contenderswanted.com. I don't have a landing page at the moment, so just email me and then I'll send it your way. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can check out the podcast at all your major podcast players and on our website at www.contenderswanted.com.
Perfect. Is there any other words of wisdom you'd like to share before we wind down?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. Okay. Well, on that note, Rob, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the Real Estate Niche Show. It's been an honor. You really shared some valuable wisdom with me and our listeners here. And and thank you everybody for listening. I'd really appreciate a share, a like, and a subscription and all that good stuff. And from a nice Jewish boy here in Austin, Texas, to a nice man in California, very true to his faith. I really appreciate you sharing all that with us today, and look forward to staying in touch and learning more. So on that
Thank
note,
you for having me on the show, Ben. Really appreciate it.
Have a wonderful, powerful day where you end your day just like Rob, proud and convinced that you did everything to the best of your abilities. So let's make that a day to remember. Talk to you soon. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Real Estate Niche Show. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me or the show, you can follow me on Instagram at Ben Kogut and at The Real Estate Niche Show. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.